Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I told you to skadoot. You gon' raise the devil now. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen. This week we are doing another movie review. This is Just Before Dawn. Released in 1981, directed by Jeff Lieberman, with an excellent score by Brad Friedel. Starring Deborah Benson, Greg Henry, George Kennedy, and John Hunsaker as the Mountain Twins, Luther and Lucas. So yeah, the one actor plays both roles. The inbred hillbilly killers, these big burly dudes, that look like the dirtiest, greasiest, nastiest inbred hillbillies you've ever seen. But the director does a great job of kind of keeping them in the background. We do kind of see them a little bit, but they're just far enough. They always seem to be just far enough to never get a real clear look at them, really. So I really like that, It gives them that kind of mysterious, almost like Michael Myers kind of edge there. But this is certainly nothing like Halloween, but it's more in the line of films like Deliverance, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original from 1974, The Hills Have Eyes, I Spit on Your Grave, stuff like that. And also Friday the 13th, of course, because this is 1981, and Friday the 13th came out in 1980, so yeah, that was the original wave of the slashers with Friday the 13th, the films that were, of course, considered like the Halloween knockoffs, but then there was that, second wave after Friday the 13th where the whole slew of them came out, And Just Before Dawn was one of them. Upon release, Just Before Dawn was not really a big hit at all, And it's definitely a low budget, and it didn't have a big release company. It was kind of released independently, And they only had a small budget of about $1 million. But it did get a lot of positive reviews from critics who praised the atmosphere and the beautiful cinematography. And that's what makes this film different, I feel, than the run-of-the-mill slasher. Because this could have easily been the run-of-the-mill slasher film, like every other one that came out at that time. But what sets it apart is the great cinematography and the great direction from Jeff Lieberman. You've got these beautiful shots of the mountainside in Oregon. It was filmed at a state park in Oregon. So you got these beautiful shots of waterfalls. You got these great hillside shots of the sunset. I love the beginning, the opening credits. It's very eerie, and you get that kind of dark sunset. With the weird kind of whistle in the background, that eerie score by Brad Friedel, which I love. It just sets the tone so well, So yeah, I think if it wasn't for the cinematography, this film would be kind of just a knockoff of Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Hills of Eyes, And to me, it blends those two equally, I would say, because you've got the initial setup is very Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the plot. You've got this group of young 20-somethings gathering together in a van, going way up in the mountains in the countryside where they don't belong, and they don't know crap about hiking and climbing and you know, and the locals try and warn them off, you know, go back home, go back where you belong, you know, you don't belong up here. And of course, that rings very true, and they get into some deep, deep trouble, you know. And that's essentially Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Exactly. They had the group of young 20-somethings gathered together in the van where they go up to the mountains where Sally's uncle owned the house or whatever. And in this case, one of the group, I guess, inherited the deed to some of the land up in the mountainside, you know. And the local forest ranger, played by George Kennedy, who is the only actor that I recognize in this film. Although the characters are played competently by the actors, yeah, there's never any real cheesy, over-the-top, like, campiness, like, say, Sleepaway Camp. It's pretty straightforward with the acting. They're obviously professionals. But George Kennedy was the only, like, celebrity actor I knew. I've seen him in a lot of movies, you know. And he does a great job. I think he's the perfect guy to play a forest ranger. He's this big burly guy, you know. And one of the guys cracks a joke. He's like, well, we don't need Smokey the Bear coming out and bothering us, you know. So they kind of throw him off the trail by saying they're, you know, we're going to be in Silver Lake, which that's not where they are, you know. And you got a great scene at the beginning. Speaking of Sleepaway Camp, the guy that plays Ty is the camp counselor in Sleepaway Camp, the old man. You know, the old man who's lusting after Meg there. And he's equally as goofy in this movie, you know. He is like a drunken hunter, you know. Him and his buddy go to the abandoned church screwing around. And one of them sees the killers up in the rooftop, you know. And he starts freaking out, and his buddy gets knocked off, and it's a great kill, a great scene with some excellent gore. When one of the hillbilly killers, who's really creepy, he's got this creepy, like, chuckling kind of laugh, you know. He's got this machete, and it's got like a real jagged edge on one side, almost like a saw blade. Stabs him right in his junk. And it comes out right through his ass. Oh man, it's nasty. There's another great scene where the group goes across this rope bridge, and it reminded me kind of the scene in Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, you know, when the rope gets cut and then the rope flies down into the rocks, and the similar type thing happens in this movie with it. One of the guys is trying to go across, and the killer, like, stabs the rope with the machete, and, you know, he falls down into the rocks. And it's really dramatic. He climbs up to the rocks, and guess who's waiting there? The killer, and he kicks him right in the face. Great stuff, man. There's another excellent scene where the girl, her name is Megan, I think. She runs off into the old abandoned church. She's getting chased by one of the killers. And he seems to kind of disappear out in the background, and we find there's another killer there. So yeah, we find out that they're twins, you know. They're twin brothers. They're identical twins. Really creepy. I like how they did that scene. That was very well done, you know. And there's another great scene where early on in the film where they're driving through the woods, and the killer kind of just jumps on back of the van, and nobody notices it. Nobody has a clue that he's hitched on to the back of the van, you know. A really cool scene. I just like little things like that throughout the film that make it so much better than the run-of-the-mill slasher, you know, which this could have easily been. Because people might, at face value, consider this derivative of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Hills Have Eyes. Now, where the Hills of Hot Eyes aspect comes into later on in the film, because it's like the group starts to fight back, you know? And it's got that vibe like we saw in The Hills Have Eyes, where the family fights back against the inbred hillbilly family, you know? And we do meet some of the other family, too, along the way. We meet this girl named Mary Cat Logan. And we meet the old crusty old man father and his wife. And they're like, get off my land, you know, he's like almost like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino with a shotgun, you know. Get off my land. But yeah, they try to warn them, try and get them out of there, and of course they never listen, and what happens? They get killed off one by one. Oh, another one of my favorite scenes is when the girl's skinny dipping, you know, in the lake. And screwing around with her boyfriend in the water, and he kind of, you know, plays dead, and she freaks out, you know, and he goes swimming off, and she's just like playing around, giggling, having fun, and the killer is in the background watching, and he goes into the lake and just goes underwater. We kind of slowly see him off in the distance. He's kind of blurred out a little bit, but we see that he's there. And he goes under the water, and she thinks it's him, you know. She thinks it's her boyfriend, but then she sees her boyfriend get out of the water onto the... and this dude's like grabbing at her, so she freaks out, you know. That's a great scene, too. So yeah, this is definitely much better than the run-of-the-mill slasher. This is a classic slasher film, you know, another 1981 classic slasher movie. So add this to the list of your favorite 1981 slashers if you've not seen it. I know this is definitely not as well known as, say, Friday the 13th, or The Burning, or My Bloody Valentine, but I think you'll find it's just as good. It fits right in there with all those, you know. So definitely I highly recommend Just Before Dawn, directed by Jeff Lieberman. Like I said, great score, very eerie by Brad Friedel, and I think you'll find that to be very enjoyable. And yeah, if you love films like Deliverance and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's a lot to love in here. And there's some great kills for the gorehound, you know. And there's some great thrills and chills, and it's a lot of fun. It's very well paced. It's never boring. So yes, I highly recommend Just Before Dawn. Also, I wanted to say that I thought was funny was, how did they get Heart of Glass by Blondie in there? I'm like, wow, how'd they afford that? I mean, that's a huge hit. That was Blondie's biggest hit, and especially at that time, that was a huge hit song. This is a very low-budget film, you know. $1 million for the whole film. Would they pay, like, $50,000 for Blondie to be in there? At any rate, thank you for joining me, folks. Thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared. Folks, don't forget to grab your Sean Patrick Erschen gear and represent the Horror Corner. Also, check out these awesome mugs we have, perfect for your coffee. And definitely check out the Horror Hangout live stream t-shirt and represent the legacy of the Horror Hangout. Check out the link in the description below this video.